Liu Zhuyan ran away from our wedding to reunite with her first love, Bai Yue Guang. In a fit of rage and despair, I married her child sister, Liu Zixi. Imagine my shock when I realized that the little girl she was raising was actually my own daughter. When Liu Zhuyan learned the truth, she was overcome with remorse and tearfully begged me to come back, but for us it was already over. In that past life, Liu Zhuyan chose to marry me only for reasons of self-interest, not forgetting about Bai Yue Guang. On the big day, she used the excuse that she needed to go to the bathroom and simply ran away from our wedding. Moreover, she used my Bai Yue Guang project as a cover to siphon funds from Liu's company. These machinations almost led the entire Liu family to complete collapse. Soon after, her Bai Yue Guang project finally failed, and she came to me demanding to borrow money. I was so enraged by her betrayal and impudence that I refused her money, not wanting to indulge her whims. Ultimately, her company was doomed and soon disbanded. From that moment on, Liu Ruyan hated me, as she deep down blamed herself for the failure of her precious Bai Yue Guang. One day, during a heavy downpour, Liu Zhuyan, mad with anger, hit me with her car. But now I'm back. I made a vow to myself. The hell that began the day Liu Zhuyan escaped will never happen again. At that moment, Liu Ruyan's father, Liu Yuan, stood to the side, overcome with shame. Old man Chen sincerely regretted his failure to raise his daughter properly. I received a message from Liu Zhuyan. I have already met both parents. Liu Zhuyan's mother, Zhao Ziyume, spoke to me, and I could see how difficult it was for her to say these words because of her feelings of guilt. Ziomo, forgive us, it's our fault, we spoiled this girl too much. Dad, Mom, I sighed, looking at them and feeling the gravity of the situation. I told Liu Yuan and Zhao Ziyume that what happened was not their fault. At that moment, the silence was broken by a knock on the living room door. Zhao Ziyume hurried to the exit to open it. A dazzlingly beautiful woman appeared on the threshold. It was Liu Zhuyan's sister, Liu Zixi, and she was holding a little girl in her arms. Zhao Ziyume was shocked. Zixi, you're really back. Hearing this, the little girl hugged me and asked, do you want to grow old? Think about it, I replied with a soft smile. Liu Zixi laughed and apologized. Sorry, the plane was delayed. In fact, there was no delay. She returned early. Today was her wedding day, and she had no idea what awaited her. I looked at this woman and simply couldn't find the right words. My thoughts involuntarily returned to the events of my past life. After Liu Zixi became pregnant, she stubbornly hid the father's name, not wanting to get rid of the child. An angry Liu Yuan kicked her out of the house at that time. She went to the city of Yan to give birth to a daughter there alone. Liu Zixi endured the expulsion without saying a word because she knew that the child was not to blame. Over the past 3 years, the relationship between Liu Zixi and Liu Yuan has gradually begun to thaw. However, she preferred to live in the city of Yan, only occasionally visiting her parents and granddaughter. Liu Yuan tried many times to find out the truth about the child's father, but Liu Zixi remained silent, and he could only resign himself to it. Looking at the little girl now, I realized how deeply rooted those memories were. In that life, everyone around me considered Liu Zhuyan and me to be the perfect couple. Liu Zixi, when she grew up, fell in love with me, but masterfully hid her feelings. 3 years ago, due to one fatal mistake, Liu Zixi became pregnant by me. This girl in front of me is my daughter. At that moment, I didn't even realize that the child was mine. And after Liu Zhuyan ran away from the wedding, I had time to come to my senses and sort out my feelings. Liu Zixi wanted to help me get back on my feet. In the end, she confessed, Liu Rui is my biological daughter. From that day on, I took on full responsibility as a father. Our feelings grew stronger, and we began planning the wedding I had always dreamed of. My past life taught me a lot, but I didn't expect that Liu Zhuyan's revenge for my refusal to give me money would end with her hitting me with a car on the eve of my happiness. Liu Zixi's voice calling out to me brought me back to reality, but as soon as she mentioned Ruyan, a tense silence fell over the room. Liu Yuan lost his composure and shouted in anger that Liu Ruyan was now dead to him. Liu Zixi, hearing her father's words, froze in place, amazed by his harshness. Zhao Ziyume hugged her granddaughter and said softly, your sister ran away from the wedding. Liu Zixi was shocked by this news. Then she gave me a quick, searching look, trying to figure out whether she was telling the truth or whether this was all just someone's stupid joke. I just sighed heavily and nodded, confirming her worst fears. Liu Zixi sighed sadly and retreated into herself for a moment. What would happen to the rest of the participants in this chaos? The old man standing nearby sighed heavily and muttered, the people have left, but there's still a crowd of guests outside. We need to decide quickly what to do next. I had to deal with this kind of thing alone before, but now I had Liu Zixi by my side. There was one obsessive thought spinning in my head that wouldn't give me any peace. Liu Yuan looked at me carefully and asked, "What is your plan?" I tried to make my voice firm and asked, "Liu Yuan, Zhao Ziyume, do you still want me as your son-in-law?" Liu Yuan raised an eyebrow in surprise. "What do you mean by that? If we didn't want you in our family, would we have allowed you to become the father of our grandson?" Zhao Ziyume nodded in agreement and added, "Zio Mo, we've seen you grow up. You've long since become like a son to me." I looked at them seriously and firmly. Since Liu Zhuyan does not want to tie her life to me, let her sister Sissy marry me. Before I could finish speaking, my mother gave me a light slap on the back of the head. She looked at me with bewilderment. "What are you talking about, you idiot? Is this some kind of inappropriate joke?" The others also heard my words, and all of them decided that I was just joking. But I wasn't joking, my voice was firm. I insisted that Sissy become my wife. Seeing the expression on my face, the guests in the hall froze in shock. They could not believe that I was speaking seriously. I turned to Liu Zixi and asked her directly, "Zixi, you love me, right?" The parents of both families instantly turned their gazes to Liu Zixi. She suddenly flushed like a poppy flower and tried to deny everything. "No, that's not true," she began, but I didn't let her finish, seizing the initiative. I announced, "In fact, little Leia is my daughter." After these words, a deathly silence reigned in the room. Everyone was shocked. Liu Zixi looked at me, and there was incredible astonishment in her eyes. Of course, she knew that I was the father of her child. But how was I to know that she had kept it a secret for so long that even she herself had difficulty admitting the fact out loud? Little Liu Lei looked at us with confusion. Uncle Chen called her his daughter. Lei really wanted a real father. Lei tugged Liu Zixi's sleeve and asked, "Mom, is Uncle Chen my dad now?" Liu Zixi's first reaction was to refute everything. But as soon as she looked into her daughter's hopeful eyes, all her determination evaporated. At that moment, I was absolutely sure that I was right. Liu Zixi was at a loss for words to justify herself. I took her hand. "Sister Sissy, Lei is our daughter. Did you really plan to hide this for the rest of your life?" Liu Zixi became nervous. "How did you know?" These words completely shocked the parents. The confession was clear. Lei was Chen Mo's daughter. I smiled and said, "You know, when I'm around her, I always feel a special calm. It must be some kind of deep psychological connection." She looked at Li and me, confused. Was this really just psychology? I squeezed her hand tighter. "You are very dear to me. We have a daughter together. Marry me." Liu Zixi remained silent, not knowing how to respond to such an unexpected proposal. My mother, watching this scene, turned to Liu Zixi and asked, "Is Lei really his daughter?" Liu Zixi only nodded quietly, hugging the girl close. The old woman came up and patted me firmly on the shoulder in a fatherly way. Then she looked at Liu Zixi softly. "If that's the case, then you should definitely marry Chen Mo." Father also nodded in agreement. No one had any objections. Liu Yuan and his wife looked at each other as if they wanted to add something, but in the end, they remained silent. Under normal circumstances, they probably wouldn't have agreed to this. One sister ran away from a wedding and the other sister immediately took her place. It seemed odd. Liu Zixi, hearing her mother's words, looked at me with undisguised doubt and hesitation. I could tell from her eyes what she was worried about and was ready to dispel any doubts. "Zixi, Liu Ruyan ran away from our wedding herself. Don't think I'll regret ever choosing her. Give me a chance to be a support for you and our daughter. Let me create a real home for us, okay?" Liu Zixi looked at me carefully, as if reading my thoughts. After a long silence, she nodded softly in agreement. 10 minutes later, the ceremony began in the banquet hall. The parents of both parties took their seats, and little Liu Lei remained in her mother's arms. I stood on the stage, unable to hide my happy smile, and watched the entrance carefully, waiting for the bride to appear. The host solemnly announced, "Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today we are gathered here to witness the union of Mr. Chen and Ms. Liu." I listened silently to the opening speech, but as soon as the music started, my heart began to beat in anticipation. The doors slowly swung open, and Liu Zixi walked into the hall wearing a dazzling wedding dress. The spotlights fell on her, making her literally glow. She looked incredibly bright. Snow-white skin, an elegant dress, deep, emotion-filled eyes, and beautifully styled hair. She was the embodiment of beauty. To the sounds of solemn music, Liu Zixi began her journey towards me. Her heart pounded wildly, as if in a dream. She walked down the red carpet, feeling the room hushed in anticipation, and she loved the silence. When she finally stood in front of me, I smiled widely and grabbed her hands tightly. At that moment, a murmur ran through the guests. They were confused. What's going on? Why is the bride different? Despite the general surprise, the older generation remained completely calm, accepting the situation as it should be. My friends were perplexed. How did the bride become Sissy's sister? What's going on here? Sissy walked up to the microphone and quietly said, "True love for a person is born when you see him for who he really is, without needing the approval of others." We moved on to exchanging rings, and the waiter brought us a pillow with jewelry. I carefully took Liu Zixie's left hand. On my ring finger, as if on an invisible piece of paper, I seemed to have written her name into my destiny. I quietly asked her into the microphone, "Sissy, do you understand what this means?" At night, I often dreamed of a mysterious girl. She played the guitar and sang for me. In these dreams, I tried to make out her face, but it kept slipping away, remaining blurry, which brought me a strange sadness. Every night this melancholy tormented me, as if tearing me apart. My voice trembled slightly. I raised my head, trying not to let the tears betray my weakness. I looked at Liu Zixie. Today, I finally saw the face of the one I'd been dreaming about clearly. She was beautiful in that white dress. "Miss Liu," I whispered, "I've finally come to pick you up." I don't know if it was the influence of love, or maybe it was the resentment that had lived in her heart for so long. A tear rolled down her cheek. At that moment, it seemed as if time itself stood still. She was crying, but she answered me with a smile. "Silence, in this vast world, you are my only faith." Having said this, she took the wedding ring and put it on my finger. After the exchange of rings, it was time for the traditional offering of tea to the parents. Liu Zixie and I held out our cups. "Dad, Mom, please have some tea." Our parents' faces lit up with satisfied smiles. The parents on both sides were very warm to both of us. But frankly, Liu Zixie's gentle and reasonable nature appealed to them even more. Liu Yuan and his wife accepted this union with genuine joy. It was obvious they were happy to have me as their son-in-law. After the wedding, we all headed to our room to relax. We discussed everything in advance. I asked my parents to act as personal witnesses to our happiness. I looked at them and asked them directly, "You still don't trust me and Sissy?" Of course they believed us. It was just important for them to be convinced of our serious intentions once again. Liu Zixie confirmed my words. I saw that she had finally made our decision. I went to the paternity agency with Li, and after confirming that she was my biological daughter, I felt an incredible sense of relief. Now we were in the wedding hall, where the parents were lovingly playing with the baby. The grandparents couldn't be happier with their granddaughter. I hugged Liu Zixie and we talked quietly, enjoying the moment. After dinner, our parents left, leaving us alone. I walked Liu Zixie and our daughter home. There was still an old wedding photo of me, with Liu Zhuyan hanging on the wall. Seeing her, Liu Zixie's face darkened, and a complex range of emotions was once again reflected in her eyes. I didn't explain anything, just took the frame off the wall. "Tomorrow, when we go for a walk, I'll throw it away," I said. Then I looked at Liu Zixie seriously. "Wife, take a moment and let's take our own wedding photos." This unexpected word, wife, made Liu Zixie freeze for a moment, her eyes showing complete confusion. The next moment, her face flushed with embarrassment. I admired the way she shyly hugged herself with her arms, and I couldn't help but say, "Wife, you are so beautiful." Liu Zixie looked at me warmly, becoming even more embarrassed. Little Leia, sitting on the bed, watched us with bewilderment. Why was Mom's face so red? And why was Dad putting his hand on her cheek? Oh no, I was so absorbed in that warm moment that for a second I forgot about our daughter's presence. Just when the atmosphere became particularly awkward, Lei suddenly spoke up. I kissed Liu Zixie on the cheek and said that I would go downstairs to check if everything was okay. When I came out of the bedroom, Liu Zixie touched the place where I kissed her with her hand, and her gaze became thoughtful. "What was that? He really kissed me," her eyes said. "Mom, I want a kiss too," Lei cried out loudly and jumping out of bed ran after us. Liu Zixie came to her senses, hugged her daughter, and she playfully licked her face. A happy smile blossomed on Liu Zixie's face. At that moment, I walked out onto the porch and opened the front door. At the threshold, I saw Liu Zhuyan. I asked coldly, "What are you doing here?" Hearing my tone, she tried to look pitiful. "Isn't this my home? Of course I came home." I grinned back at her. "Your home, Liu Zhuyan, come to your senses. You ran away from a wedding. What face can you make to call this place your home?" She paused for a moment. "I know I ran away, but I had my reasons." I interrupted her, not wanting to continue. "I don't want to listen to your excuses. I don't want to see you. Go away." She looked at me, stunned, unable to believe what she was hearing. "What are you talking about?" My irritation grew. I said, "Go away. Did you hear me clearly enough? Are you driving me away just because I ran away? You're saying such cruel words to me." There was hurt in her voice. Liu Zhuyan's eyes showed complete incomprehension of the situation. I've always tried to hide the truth from her before, but now I'm determined to break this vicious cycle. I don't have any feelings for you anymore. Liu Zhuyan, what does a wedding mean to you? A game? You can leave if you want, I don't care. Your presence here irritates me. Goodbye. Liu Zhuyan bit her lip, but I had my reasons. I wanted to be with the one I love. We grew up together, she continued, but is this love or just habit? I can't figure it out myself. I silently watched her attempts to justify herself. Just like last time, she was looking for an excuse to escape. But what I didn't know then was that her Bai Yue Guang was just a lie, and that faking her suicide was just a way of manipulation. She knew she wouldn't commit suicide, but she ran away anyway because she wanted to meet him. In my past life, I didn't know the truth, and I believed it. But in this life, I felt only a slight disgust towards her. Liu Zhuyan looked at me and tried to take my hand. I know you're angry, she said. I'm sorry, you're okay, right? She sincerely believed that I was simply offended and was obliged to forgive her. Maybe my heart has become cold, I don't know. But I was reborn. How could I allow myself to make the same mistake twice? I looked her straight in the eyes and said coldly, "You don't have a single chance. My wedding is already over." These words were reflected on Liu Ruyan's face like a blow. How did it happen? She asked again. You're the groom and I ran away. She didn't know that Liu Zixi had arrived with her daughter. Since Liu Zixi had not been home for a long time, she brought the girl to introduce her to her parents. Liu Zixi, who followed me out, noticed that Liu Zhuyan looked completely lost. Liu Zhuyan, in turn, saw Liu Zixi and froze in confusion. Sister, what are you doing here? She whispered. Liu Zixi remained silent, not knowing what to answer. Despite the fact that Liu Sissy might feel guilty about what happened, decided to put everything in its place. I put my arm around Liu Zixi's shoulder and said firmly, "We're married. This is my wife and this is our home. She didn't need to leave, she's back where she belongs." Hearing this, Liu Ruyan staggered. That's impossible, she shook her head, refusing to accept the truth. Chen Mo loved me so much, how could he marry my sister so quickly? Besides, my parents would never have agreed to it. He's just trying to deceive himself, she thought. Liu Zhuyan frowned. I don't believe you're married. It can't be true. It's some kind of lie. I just chuckled in response. Whether you believe it or not doesn't change anything. With these words, I slammed the door in front of her. Liu Zhuyan was shocked by such a decisive action. After recovering from her astonishment, she shouted into the darkness, "Chen Mo, come out and explain." In the courtyard, Liu Zixi heard her sister's screams, and her eyes reflected complex feelings. I walked up to her and touched her shoulder reassuringly. Don't worry about her, let's go back to the house. We closed the door, leaving everything outside. Liu Zhuyan stood at the threshold, looking like she was crazy. Finally, she turned around and walked to the car, deciding to tell her parents everything immediately. Chen Mo is simply unbearable, she fumed. First he put on this show with the wedding and now he's lying about marrying my sister. And Sissy, how could she allow this? Why did she let him stay in this house with her daughter? She was tormented by questions. At that moment, Liu Zhuyan was filled with a thirst for justice. She wanted her parents to stand up for her. Half an hour later, she parked the car in the garage of her parents' house. At this time, Liu Yuan and his wife were sitting in the tea room, talking about something. Zhao Ziyume sighed. All these years, Zixi was alone with a child. She had to endure rumors and sidelong glances. Life was unbearably hard. But she carried it all on her own shoulders without ever complaining, the mother added. Just think, the child's father remained silent until the very end. It's no wonder he didn't dare reveal the truth sooner, she continued. I just didn't know what happened after Liu Zhuyan returned. Liu Yuan listened to his wife silently, clenching his fists. Hearing that Liu Zhuyan had thrown another tantrum, abandoning everyone on her wedding day, his expression darkened. She still had the nerve to come home. At this moment, Liu Zhuyan's footsteps were heard heading towards them. The parents, hearing a knock, asked to open the door to the tea room. Their expressions were icy, and when Liu Ruyan entered, the atmosphere in the room became unbearably oppressive. But this time, everything was different. Liu Yuan, seeing her, forcefully slammed his cup on the table. He laughed angrily. Do you still have the nerve to come back? Liu Zhuyan looked at her father and, seeing his rage, suddenly became frightened. She burst into tears and fell silent. In her memory, her father had never been so terrifying. Zhao Ziyume, out of motherly habit, tried to soften the blow. Liu Yuan, don't be angry. Let Ruyan explain everything. Liu Yuan looked straight at his daughter. Okay, I'm listening. Why did you run away from the wedding? Answer clearly. Liu Zhuyan hesitated. I just couldn't figure out my feelings. Was it love or affection? I needed time. Zhao Ziyumei's eyes filled with pain. She couldn't believe her daughter had run away because of such selfish doubts. The problem isn't your feelings, the mother sighed, but that you decided to run away on your wedding day without thinking about anyone but yourself. Hearing this, Liu Yuan couldn't bear it any longer. Your excuses mean nothing, and smashed the cup on the floor with a crash. He pointed painfully at the door. So that's why you ran away. Get out of the house. Liu Zhuyan looked at her parents pleadingly. Why are you all pushing me away? I haven't done anything wrong. Liu Yuan trembled with anger. You still don't understand what you've done. Liu Zhuyan's eyes turned red. What did I do? Liu Yuan just shook his head, looking at her with bitterness. Even if your reasons seem right to you, you had no right to treat Chen Mo like that, he snapped. Zhao Ziyumei, seeing her husband's state, looked at her daughter with complex feelings. Ru Yan, you are not acting like an adult, but like a capricious child. Liu Yuan turned away and pointed to the door. Get out, let her leave this house immediately. Zhao Ziyumei added, you should spend some time on your own and reflect on your behavior. Chen Mo is no longer yours, and perhaps this will be beneficial for you to mature. Chen Mo can't be with me. What are you talking about? Liu Ruyan was completely confused. Zhao Ziyumei looked at her directly. Nai Jai, that is, Liu Zixi, is now Chen Mo's wife. Liu Zhuyan's eyes widened. At first, she thought it was another lie meant to teach her a lesson. But seeing her mother's seriousness, she began to doubt and for the first time became truly afraid. She left the house, got into the car, and after a few minutes stopped nearby. She buried her head in the steering wheel and burst into tears. I just wanted to escape my marriage. What's wrong with that? Why won't anyone understand me and let me back in? Thoughts of losing her home kept coming into her mind, and she felt abandoned like a stray cat. Besides the unpleasant feeling inside, she was tormented by the question, is this marriage really true? Her mother's words made her incredulous mind shudder. She wiped away her tears, took out her phone, and sent messages to friends who were present at the wedding and saw the bride in person. The answers came quickly, and they were all brief. The bride was Liu Zixi. Liu Ruyan stared at the screen, completely confused. Chen Mo loved me so much, how could he marry my sister, she thought. She shook her head again. No, my sister has a daughter and her father is a man who knows nothing. How could Chen Mo's parents do this? It must be a fake, a deception. Liu Zhuyan convinced herself that she was incredibly lucky. Even if it was a wedding, it was probably just a staged scam designed to teach her a lesson. She got angry. You decided to lie to me to make me angry and suffer. Fine. Since you want to play this game, I'll see how long you last, she thought. Afterwards, she started the car and drove to Zioying, her first love. Now, feeling exiled, she desperately searched for someone who would understand her. Soon she arrived at the Zioying residential complex and knocked on the door of the rented apartment. A man in glasses opened the door. Zioying looked at her in surprise. Zhu Yan, what are you doing here? She replied, blushing with embarrassment, they rejected me. Seeing how upset she was, Zioying was heartbroken. What happened? Liu Zhuyan, breathing heavily, began to talk about Chen Mo and his parents. They don't want to see me. They kicked me out. Listening to her complaints, Zioying felt confused inside because he still had feelings for her. He felt sickened by her words. Ru Yan, when will you finally let him go? Let's be together for real. Liu Ru Yan wanted comfort, but instead Zioying, as before, began to persistently demand an answer to his feelings. She became even more upset. I don't know what to do. Do you love me or not? I'm crying in front of you, and instead of consoling me, you ask me such questions. Zioying was frightened. I'm sorry, Ru Yan, of course I love you. Then came his long, impassioned speech about how long he was willing to wait and how hard he was willing to try for her. Looking into his devoted eyes, Liu Zhuyan calmed down and stopped crying. I'm hungry, she whispered. I'll order food now, Zioying replied, and 10 minutes later the courier brought the order. Liu Ru Yan looked at the plain rice porridge and buns in front of her, and her face fell. Did you order this? Isn't that enough? Zioying asked nonchalantly. If you want, I'll order more. Liu Zhuyan paused and shook her head. No need, that's enough. She remembered how Chen Mo had always been considerate of her appetite and tastes, and her mood became heavy again. Meanwhile, little Liu Lei pulled my sleeve. Will you always be my dad? I smiled and replied, of course your dad will always be your dad. A happy smile lit up Liu Lei's face. She finally had a real father. I looked into my daughter's eyes and the word daddy filled me with awe. It symbolized immense responsibility and love. I didn't know if I would be the perfect father, but my heart melted at the sight of her smile. I was happy that I could give her the best. I clearly realized that now in my heart lived the two dearest girls. The first is my daughter Liu Lei. The second is Liu Zixi. Turning around, I saw Liu Zixi herself. She watched our conversation and her face suddenly flushed. She quietly asked, "What are you looking at like that?" "Of course I'm looking at my wife," I smiled. Liu Zixi blinked. "What's so special about this?" "That I can finally be with you forever," I replied, looking at her lovingly. Liu Zixi's embarrassment grew even more intense. It was soon time to put her daughter to bed. I hugged the baby with a smile and we went to the bedroom. In the cozy light of the nightlight, Liu Zixi and I lay at the ends of the bed with our daughter in the middle. It was the perfect, warm picture of a real family. We slept well. Of course, I kept a low profile. Firstly, my daughter was nearby, and secondly, our wedding had been too rushed. Although I was confident in my feelings, Liu Zixi needed time to get used to her new status. A week after the wedding, we went to register our marriage. Over the course of those days, Liu Zixi began to trust me even more, and a deep affection grew between us. My parents often came to visit us, each time bringing Leia a sea of toys and sweets. Liu Yuan also often invited us to have dinner together. As for Liu Zhuyan, she had not appeared for several days, and there was no sign of her in the Liu household. Today, Liu Zixi and I decided to have a professional photo shoot. We started by taking a few photos in the courtyard of our villa. Then we headed to the studio to try on custom-made outfits and capture our love in a variety of styles. After the photo shoot, evening arrived. We returned home tired, but looking forward to the celebratory dinner with our parents that had been planned to celebrate our occasion. As soon as the mother entered the house, she immediately rushed to her granddaughter. My dear, aren't you tired?" She immediately picked up the baby in her arms, beaming with joy. The mother-in-law took a bottle of water and gave it to Leia, who had just returned from a walk. She snuggled up to her grandmother with pleasure, accepting her care. Liu Zixi and I watched this scene and exchanged quiet, smiling glances. The house was cozy. The table was set for dinner and we all sat down together. As we ate, I carefully peeled a shrimp and placed it on Liu Zixi's plate. Liu Zixi looked at the shrimp and then popped it into her mouth, continuing to eat with such gusto that her cheeks visibly swelled. Mom, seeing this, laughed contentedly, looking at us. Suddenly, all eyes focused on Liu Zixi. I noticed that her mouth was full of food and she looked like a little hamster, which made me smile involuntarily. Liu Zixi noticed the attention being directed at her and felt a little embarrassed. "Eat more slowly, don't choke," I said with a smile and carefully wiped the corner of her mouth with a napkin. Liu Zixi blushed completely under my concern. Our parents, watching our idols, smiled warmly. At that moment, the door suddenly swung open. Liu Zhuyan entered, seething with anger. She'd hoped this wedding game would end in a couple of days, but her family hadn't contacted her. It turned out that Liu Yuan had been waiting on principle for his daughter to admit her guilt, reminding everyone that she was his own blood. Seeing her, the mother's face darkened, and the father only turned away coldly. I caught my father's eye, who gestured, "Don't pay attention." Liu Yuan, seeing Liu Ruyan's state, only sighed heavily, barely holding back the pain in his heart. Seeing Liu Zhuyan tumble in, I froze. Memories of my past life washed over me like a wave of hatred, but I reminded myself that I shouldn't make a scene in front of my parents. Liu Zixi looked at her sister and was speechless. Seeing that she was being pointedly ignored, Liu Ruyan flushed and her eyes turned bloodshot. She lost control when she spotted the plate of peeled shrimp next to me. She felt like I was treating my sister with a tenderness that was meant for her. Apparently, this special treatment, what I had done for her before, was now going to someone else. "You like this?" she screamed and rushed to the table, grabbing a pot of hot soup, intending to splash it on Liu Zixi and me. Luckily, I reacted instantly and managed to push Liu Zixi aside. The soup didn't fall on us, but in a rage, Liu Zhuyan threw the pot right on the table. The pot shattered with a crash and Lei screamed in fright. Liu Zixi, seeing that her daughter was terrified, rushed to calm her down. However, Liu Ruyan grabbed her wrist roughly. "What are you doing here? Why are you sitting next to Chen Mo? Even if it's a fake wedding, you can't behave like this." Everyone present was shocked by her words. I looked at her with a cold, piercing gaze. "Let her go," I said in a low, commanding voice. Liu Zhuyan froze for a second, startled. She'd never seen me like this. My cold tone and gaze struck her like a knife. What do you mean? You value your sister more than me. I was your fiancé. How can you be so cruel? She screamed. She let go of Liu Zixi, but at the same time pushed her forcefully. Liu Zixi almost fell onto the table, but I managed to catch her. I stared at Liu Zhuyan with a gaze full of icy contempt. At this moment, Liu Yuan could not bear it any longer. He walked up to her and gave her a resounding slap. Liu Zhuyan clutched her face in shock. Her father had never raised a hand against her in his life. Pain and resentment mingled in her soul. Zhao Ziyume gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. She pitied her daughter, but she knew she had gone too far. Liu Yuan's hand trembled. He had always pampered her, and this blow had taken its toll on him, causing no less pain than his own. Liu Zhuyan glared at him with hatred. You hit me. While protecting her, I don't have a father like you anymore. Liu Yuan flinched, his daughter's words hitting him harder than any physical impact. Zhao Ziyume tried to appeal to her reason. Zhuyan, what are you saying? I speak my mind, I don't have a father, she shouted at me and turned back to me. Chen Mo, if you like to play at love with your sister, then play it for the rest of your life. Never expect my forgiveness. She burst into tears and ran out of the house. After she left, a heavy silence fell over the room. I called the nanny over to help clean up the broken glass. Liu Zixi stared at the empty door. She felt guilty for marrying me and angry at her sister for her words to our father. Dad, don't be sad, Liu Zixi said quietly. She's just not herself right now. My father patted me heavily on the shoulder, trying to hide his sadness. It's okay, I can handle it, Liu Yuan squeezed out, trying to smile. He turned to his wife and quietly said, Sume, let's go home. Zhao Ziyume quietly cried and nodded slightly. Liu Zixi looked at me and then at my father, who looked completely crushed. I realized that she needed to be with her parents and nodded encouragingly. After receiving my consent, Liu Zixi immediately said, Mom, Dad, I'll go home with you. Liu Yuan patted her hand gratefully, and the three of them went home. My parents stayed with us to look after Li while we sorted out the situation. After they left, Mom sat in the living room, sighed heavily and shook her head. Ru Yan, how could she say such terrible words to father? Dad also looked depressed. When I saw old Liu leave, he seemed to have aged 10 years. Imagine how much pain he's in, the father said. If your own son threw that in your face, how would you feel? My mother looked at me with a stern expression. If he had dared to say such a thing to me, I would have torn him to pieces. It's a good thing I didn't give birth to such a person. I couldn't help but laugh, trying to diffuse the situation, and went over to hug her shoulders. Don't worry, Mom, you are the main empress in my house, and no one will hurt you. Mom looked at me carefully, closed her eyes, and added with a smile, Okay, I'll take your word for it. Meanwhile, in Liu's home, an oppressive silence reigned in his office. Liu Yuan sat alone, untouched by his dinner. Liu Zixi walked in quietly, carrying a cup of honey water. Liu Yuan sat motionless, looking at the book, but it was clear that he was not reading. Liu Zixi, noticing how much his hair had turned gray, couldn't hold back her tears. Dad, drink some water. Liu Yuan slowly picked up the cup, took a sip, and quietly asked, Zixi, tell me honestly, am I a bad father? Liu Zixi quickly replied, Dad, what are you talking about? You are the best father in the world. Liu Yuan shook his head bitterly. Then why did Zhu Yan shout that she didn't have a father like me? Liu Zixi's heart sank. Dad, don't take this to heart. She said this in a fit of rage without realizing what she was doing. Liu Yuan took a deep breath. She was always stubborn. I hope I can forget those words. Liu Zixi nodded. I'll go check if Mom has prepared anything to eat. Go, daughter, he smiled weakly. Leaving the office, Liu Zixi took out her phone and typed a message to her sister. Ru Yan, where are you? Come home and apologize to Dad. But the message didn't send. In return, she received a system error message. She rang the bell. The street noise could be heard on the other end. Ru Yan, where are you? Dad is very upset. Please come back, she begged. A sharp curse sounded on the line, and Liu Zhuyan hung up, adding Sissy to her blacklist. Liu Zixi was in despair when suddenly there was a dull knock at the office door. Her heart sank with a sense of foreboding. She threw open the door and screamed in horror. Liu Yuan lay unconscious on the floor. Liu Zixi rushed to him, trying to bring him back to his senses, and immediately began frantically calling me. At that moment, I was giving my mother a massage. My phone vibrated. Wife, what happened? I asked. Liu Zixi's voice trembled with tears. Dad has lost consciousness. We're going to the hospital. I immediately stood up. Don't panic. Everything will be fine. Which hospital exactly? In Wana, she sobbed. Having received the address, I quickly said goodbye to my parents and flew out of the house, having agreed to meet there. My parents, seeing my reaction, understood everything without words. Liu Zixie's father is in the hospital. I need to go, I said as I walked. Father immediately got ready. I will go with you to support them. In a few minutes, we were already on our way. By the time we arrived, the doctors were already finishing their examination. An hour later, the results came back, nothing critical. It was a fit of intense exhaustion and a nervous breakdown brought on by Liu Zhuyan's behavior. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. I walked up to Liu Zixie, who was sitting in the hallway, and put my hand on her shoulder. It's all over, calm down. Liu Zixie nodded, trying to breathe deeply. Liu Yuan slowly opened his eyes and, seeing us, quietly muttered, "It's already so late, sorry for disturbing you." "Dad, what are you talking about? The main thing is that you're okay," I replied. My father smiled. "Liu, you need to get better. I'm still waiting for us to finally go fishing." The old man smiled weakly in response, sensing genuine concern. "Rest, everything is fine now," my father added, patting him on the hand. Liu Zixie's mother stayed in the room to look after him, and we went out into the corridor. Liu Zixie and I were finally able to breathe a sigh of relief after leaving the ward behind. Dad looked exhausted. In his eyes, Liu Yuan was now as fragile as smoke, ready to disperse at the slightest breath. I remained silent, not knowing what to say to Liu Zixie. I saw how her father, my father-in-law, understood everything without further ado. He said quietly, "I've already asked my friends to find her. As soon as there's news, I'll bring her here." Hearing this, I was skeptical about his words. Liu Zixie turned and looked at me doubtfully. She had hoped that father would come, but I saw the situation differently. I shook my head and replied, "I'm afraid that's not what she meant when she left. There's a risk that her appearance will only anger everyone even more." Liu Zixie hesitated. Dad was already in the hospital, and he couldn't stand the stress. I just smiled bitterly. Who knows what's on her mind? She's capable of unpredictable behavior. Who knows what she'll do in the hospital? I sighed and added, "It's better not to provoke her directly. I'll ask my friends to text her to see what mood she's in and whether she's even ready to talk." Liu Zixie silently nodded in agreement. I first took my father home and then returned to the hospital to be with Liu Zixie. When I entered the room, I saw that Liu Zixie's eyes were red from crying. I went over and hugged her, and she snuggled into me. "Go get some rest," I whispered. She clung to me and whispered, "Husband." This address filled my heart with warmth, despite the difficult situation. There was alarm in her eyes. "You have no idea how scared I was. I'm still in shock." "Don't be afraid," I stroked her hair. "I'm here. I'm close by, and I'll take on all the difficulties." She snuggled into my arms like a kitten. That moment of silence was a lifesaver. She hugged me tightly, and I felt her tension slowly ease. I looked at her with tenderness, but she answered me with a confused look. She smiled slightly and said, "I suddenly remembered my childhood. When I ran off to play, I always lied to you that I wasn't taking you with me. You cried and begged, 'Sissy, don't forget me.' I never imagined," she continued, "that the boy who cried with me would become my husband, who now protects me from the whole world." I smiled and lightly pinched her cheek. "Do you still remember that?" "Of course I remember. I will never forget you." Such genuine love shone in her eyes that it took my breath away. We fell silent, enjoying every second spent together in the semi-darkness of the hospital room. After a while, Liu Zixie added, "I contacted mutual friends. They'll tell Ru Yan that Dad's in the hospital. She should come." I shook my head, not wanting to continue this conversation. "I don't care whether she comes or not. Let's try to get some sleep instead." At the same time, in a noisy bar, Liu Zhuyan was sitting at a card table, and next to her was Xiao Yan. Opposite them sat a man hugging two girls. This whole atmosphere made Liu Zhuyan feel downright disgusted. "Mr. Xiao, offer your girlfriend a drink. How can you come to a bar and not drink?" The man in the black suit chuckled. Xiao Yan turned around and looked at Liu Ruyan. "I don't drink," she stated dryly and defiantly, wanting nothing to do with Xiao Yan's partners. Xiao Yan quickly intervened. "Mr. Zhang, I'm sorry, but my girlfriend won't drink." Mr. Zhang, ignoring her refusal, poured wine into a used glass and placed it in front of her. "Come on, what's the big deal? Drink it, don't offend me." Liu Zhuyan looked at the dirty glass with disgust. She had absolutely no idea why she had to put up with this. Mr. Zhang's smile turned menacing. "Mr. Xiao, this is no longer acceptable. Your girlfriend doesn't see me as a partner." He clearly hinted that the success of Xiao Yang's company depended on this cooperation. Xiao Yan's expression darkened. "Ru Yan, Mr. Zhang's investment is crucial to us. Why can't you just have a drink?" Liu Ru Yan looked at him in horror. She hadn't expected such words from Xiao Yan. If it had been me, I would never have forced her to do something she didn't like. Xiao Yan, noticing her cold gaze, felt guilty, but did not retreat. Liu Zhuyan didn't answer, but just nodded silently. Xiao Yan turned around and began to apologize to Zhang, humiliating himself for the sake of money. They soon left, Liu Zhuyan walking ahead without saying a word. Xiao Yan caught up with her. Ru Yan, I'm sorry, I was wrong to force you. Liu Zhuyan walked with a bitter expression on her face. Xiao Yan tried to justify himself. You have to understand, he's my biggest investor, I can't make him angry. Everything I do is for our future, he sighed. I don't want you to live in poverty. I work hard every day to provide you with a decent life. These words softened the hurt in Liu Ruyan's heart. Xiao Yan raised his hand to touch her face, and after a moment's hesitation, she allowed him to take her hand. What are you doing? I never said I wouldn't forgive you, she whispered. At this moment, Xiao Yan's eyes sparkled with joy. So you forgive me. Liu Zhuyan nodded softly. I know this isn't easy for you. I'm very touched by your efforts. But if this happens again... Before she could finish, Xiao Yan interrupted her. Next time this won't happen, I promise. Liu Ruyan nodded. She looked at Xiao Yan's flushed cheek where he'd hit himself with pain in her eyes. Does it hurt? Xiao Yan pressed his lips together, trying not to show it. It doesn't hurt. The important thing is that you forgave me. What does this pain mean to me, even if I had to do anything for you? Don't talk nonsense, Liu Zhuyan interrupted him, and don't you dare hurt yourself again. Xiao Yan, looking at her with feigned adoration, nodded. Okay, I promise. After walking a little further, they finally separated after a long and exhausting showdown. Xiao Yan went to his rented house. Liu Zhuyan headed towards her best friend's house. When she entered, her friend was already asleep. Liu Zhuyan didn't want to wake her, but conflicting feelings warred within her. Earlier, when Liu Zixi called her at the bar, she deliberately ignored the call and turned off her phone. After washing herself and going to bed, she turned on her phone again and saw many missed calls and messages, including one from her friend, Wang Peipei. Liu Zhuyan, breathing heavily, burst into her friend's bedroom and quickly pushed her awake. Are you back? Wang Peipei sleepily opened her eyes, her voice soft and lazy. Liu Zhuyan looked at her and blurted out, What's going on? How did my father end up in the hospital? Wang Peipei laughed. I don't really know myself. Your sister called me and said that Uncle Liu had fainted. But don't worry, it's nothing. She just wants you to visit him. When are you planning to go? Liu Zhuyan wanted to rush out at first, but remembering her father's slap, a chill came over her. I won't go. Wang Peipei was stunned by her answer. Liu Zhuyan clenched her fists. He hit me today. I don't have a father like that anymore. Let this be retribution for that slap. I'm not going to visit him. Wang Peipei asked in amazement, Uncle Liu hit you. How did that happen? Liu Zhuyan nodded and began to vividly describe her grievances against Chen Mo and what had happened at home. Wang Peipei, listening to her, only nodded, fueling her anger. How could he do that? You didn't do anything wrong. Hearing this, Liu Zhuyan became even more angry. That's right, I'm right, and I'm not going to bow to him. Half a month passed, Liu Yuan was discharged from the hospital, but during all this time, Liu Zhuyan still did not visit him. And not only Liu Zixi, but even Zhao Ziyume tried to reason with her, begging her to make peace with her father, but Liu Zhuyan remained adamant. Liu Yuan said nothing, but his sad gaze showed how much he had been waiting for her to arrive. This silent wait broke his heart. Liu Zixi was deeply disappointed with her sister's behavior. On the way home, we tried not to mention her name so as not to upset our parents. The evening in our house was festive. After dinner, Mom hugged our little Li and said sadly, See you tomorrow, granddaughter. Goodbye, Grandma, Lei said to her. Looking at this scene, I felt a pang in my heart. We will see each other tomorrow. Are you really so reluctant to part? Liu Zixi looked at her mother and suggested, Mom, if it's so hard for you to part, why don't you take Lei with you for the night? Mom was surprised. Is this really possible? She looked at us with a smile. Liu Zixi nodded. Of course, Mom. She kissed her daughter tenderly. Lei, you'll sleep at Grandma's tonight, okay? Lei hugged her mother around the neck, and Liu Zixi quickly gathered everything she needed, a change of clothes and food. Let Mom take all this, she said, handing over the bag. As soon as the door closed behind them, I hugged Liu Zixi around the waist. Wife, tonight we will finally be alone together. Liu Zixi looked at me with slight embarrassment, not immediately understanding my intentions but blushing. I smiled and added, I mean no one will bother us now. Liu Zixi blinked, her face suddenly flushed red and her gaze became embarrassed. Her heart started beating faster. I touched my finger to her lips and whispered, Well, shall we go? I kissed her tenderly on the forehead and went to the bathroom. Liu Zixi bit her lip and nodded quietly. A few minutes later, I came out of the bathroom in a robe. Liu Zixi was still sitting on the edge of the bed, her eyes filled with worry. She smiled timidly at me and headed for the bathroom. I lay down on the bed, eagerly waiting for her to return. Half an hour later, Liu Zixi came out of the bathroom. I looked at her, feeling my heart burning with love and desire. Noticing my gaze, Liu Zixi became even more embarrassed. Thoughts of what was about to happen next made her heart beat wildly. I saw her tense hands and flushed face, and I couldn't help but smile. Darling. I gently pulled her towards me, hugged her, and together we sat down on the bed. Liu Zixi clenched her fists, her eyes tightly closed with excitement. That night we were truly close, leaving the world outside our room. The next morning, before I could fully wake up, I felt a light touch on my face. Opening my eyes, I saw that Liu Zixi was no longer asleep. She lay on her side, admiring me. Her graceful white hand gently touched my cheek. Seeing that I was awake, she flared up like a flame. I gently took her hand, kissed it, and then pulled her towards me, laying her head on the pillow next to mine. She closed her eyes, enjoying my attention. I pulled her close, burying my face in her hair. In that moment, it seemed as if time stood still, gifting us with moments of absolute happiness.